In the late 1400s, the Jews of Spain were enjoying great prosperity. And then Torquemada came to power. And he forced Jews to convert to Christianity. And if they didn't, they were burned at the stake, and thousands of Jews lost their lives. Eventually, in 1492, the Jews of Spain were expelled, led by the Abarbanel out of Spain. And at that time, Rabbi Avram Saba, the author of the Tzror Amor, wrote the following. Dorashti ezeh harbe pamim. I spoke about this many times. It says in the pasuk, Eile pekudei hamishkan mishkan ha'edus asher pukad al pi Moshe. Pukad, he explains, means something that is missing. Eile pekudei hamishkan mishkan ha'edus. The term mishkan is mentioned twice because the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed twice. Churban happens because asher pukad al pi Moshe. He says the Jews at this time are learning beautifully. There's much Torah. You know what the problem is? Al pi Moshe. When the Yidden take out the Sifrei Torah in Shul, then all of a sudden, people start talking and chirping and prattling endlessly. And they leave the Sefer Torah by the bima with no kavod, no honor. And it's because of that is why a churban happens. And we will follow history throughout the last 550 or so years. And you will find the same pattern occurs over and over again. Yidden are gewaldig, they're special, they're wonderful. And their davening is fantastic. But there are moles, there are people that are sabotaging our tefillas. Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar was thrown into a lion's den. Somebody had tattled to the governor and said that he was plotting against him. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar was going to be thrown to the lions, and they starved the lions for days. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar says, I'm about to die. Give me a final last request. And they said, sure. He says, bring me my talis and tefillin. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar wrapped himself in his talis and his tefillin. And then he went into the lion's den, and the lions didn't move, they didn't budge. And this fellow who had conspired against Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar says, something's wrong. Somebody must have fed the lions. But the governor noticed, this is ridiculous. This man must be a holy man. And they threw this man who conspired against Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar into the lion's den. And the lions ripped him limb by limb. And they killed him. And they asked Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar, how are you protected? He said, you don't understand. I've never spoken in my talis and tefillin. And when a Yid never speaks in his talis and tefillin, and he wraps himself in those talis and tefillin, then he's untouchable. No one can stop him. The Taisus Yontif understood this. And in 1648, 1649, during the Gzeres Tach V'Tat, he attributed the thousands of deaths where the Yidden were butchered by Bogdan Khmelnytsky and the Polish peasants. He attributed it to the fact that Yidden were talking in Shul, because otherwise their tefillas would have stopped these terrible gzeres against Klal Yisrael. But when we speak, we sabotage our tefillas. And it continues throughout history. In the early 1900s, there was a Yid by the name of Rav Eisenman. He came from Frankfurt. And in Frankfurt, the Anhaga was people did not speak in Shul. And he came to Antwerp, and he noticed people aren't following the same Hanhaga. And he was very bothered, and he built his own Shul. And in that Shul, if you spoke, they immediately shushed you up. And it was known, no one says a word in Eisenman's Shul. During World War II, hundreds, if not thousands, of Bate Midrashis and Bate Knesiyas were destroyed. But in Antwerp, there was one Beis HaKnesses that remained untouched, Sifrei Torah intact, and that was the Eisenman Shul. Because when we don't talk in Shul, we are untouchable. In 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, the Ger Rebbe would walk up and down the aisles of the Beis Medrash, and he would shush people to make sure Hashem yilochem lochem v'atem tacharishon, the Rebbeinu Shalom will fight for you, but you be quiet. Our job is to be silent in Shul when we're not davening. Don't say a word. Recently, a friend of mine shared something remarkable. His daughter had went out once, and then for the next year she was not read a shidduch. And someone told him a skula. The Ger Rebbe says that if you don't talk bein gavra legavra, between the different parts of tefillah, when they take out the Sifrei Torah between one aliyah and the next, if you do not talk bein gavra legavra, you'll be zoichet to a gavra. You'll be zoichet to a choshev boy. He took it upon himself, and 3 weeks later, his daughter was engaged. By his second daughter, he already knew the skula, but nothing was happening, and he decided, what can I do more? And he decided he's going to be mekabel upon himself not to talk at all in middle of davening. And 3 weeks later, she became a kala. I'd like to end by sharing with you a personal story. And those that know me know that I don't have a problem talking. But approximately 16 years ago, I had attended a shir. It was a remarkable shir for some Israeli not yet Balei Tshuva. And at that time, the Maggid Shir showed them a video. And he told them about Rav Amnon Yitzchak. And Rav Amnon Yitzchak was standing in a coliseum with thousands of people, and he showed them a child, and the child was nebuch bald, was undergoing treatments for radiation and chemotherapy. And he said, who's going to be mekabel ol malchut shamayim for this child? And one by one, men came forward. They put on yarmulkes and tzitzis, and women came forward, and they wrapped shawls around themselves and covered their hair. They were mekabel ol malchut shamayim. And 4 months later, the child had a refuah shalema. And after showing this video, a woman walks in. It was Mrs. Sella, my good friend Nisan Sella's wife. And walking in with her was his 4-year-old daughter, a little beautiful girl, completely bald, with big black eyes. And she said, who's going to be mekabel ol malchut shamayim for my Odelia? And people were very moved. And I came back to our Beis Medrash here in Yeshivas Chavetz Chaim TA, and I told it over to Rabbi Teichman and Rabbi Hershkowitz. And they said, no, Spiro, what are you going to do? At that time, it was 6 weeks before Simchas Torah. And I said, you know what? In this Beis Medrash, and only in this Beis Medrash, I'm going to be mekabel upon myself not to talk during davening. It was only a 6-week Kabbalah. I could do it for 6 weeks. And afterwards, Rabbi Hershkowitz promised that his wife would bring over some stuffed cabbage, some chalupshis, and we made a kiddush. And I'm only telling this to you because if I can do it, anybody can do it. But for the last 16 years, every Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, we have another kiddush, a Kabbalah kiddush, where we accept upon ourselves that we're not going to talk in the Beis Medrash. And Bili Ayin Hara, Baruch Hashem, I've been able to do it. And I'm telling you, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And somebody called me and he said, I heard about this Kabbalah that you do. My child was born, and they say he's going to lose his eyesight. What is it? I said, it's very simple. Just say, Rebbeinu Shalom, I'm not going to talk in the middle of davening. And today, the boy can see. It's not that hard. Start small. A week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks. And before long, you will bring refuahs and yeshuas, an incredible, incredible mazel to all of Klal Yisrael.